You idiots, that's medicine.
And now, ladies and gentlemen,
It's not your business.
All right, how y'all doing? Welcome to the show. My name's Dennis, not your business. And today we're gonna talk about prostate cancer, the things you have to go through, and what you should be aware of that might be happening to you. Now, I'm doing it here on Telegram first. I'll leave a link to the video in the comment section. I'm doing it on Telegram because YouTube and everybody else is very censored, and I don't want to be concerned about what I'm going to say, and hopefully I can edit out the things that YouTube or others won't like, and to be able to play it there. So, a little background first. I am not the healthiest guy in the world. This is true. I have, before COVID arrived in Canada, I was already diagnosed with COPD, rheumatoid arthritis, and I also had hemorrhoids, which I had surgically removed, but this will become an issue later on in our discussions. Now, this is, what people might not understand about socialized medicine in Canada. They always think that it's free. And, in a sense it is, but you still have to pay for your medications, and you still have to follow direction and do as you say, or it might not come out the best for you. And I'm going to explain that hopefully without getting eliminated from YouTube. So, back in the day, 60, 70 years ago, I seen this report. It said that most doctors actually worked for themselves, family doctors. So they weren't reliant on a hospital or big pharma or anything like that. You went to the doctor and he wasn't really affiliated with any hospital. And if you got diagnosed with something, then he would try and find the best doctor that could take care of your issue, whether it's operation or chemotherapy or radiation or whatever. It's not all about cancer. This is the way the doctors work in Canada. Whereas today, the doctors in Canada are all affiliated with the hospital. And I know you're sitting there thinking, what do you mean affiliated? Well, my case in point, my family doctor is affiliated with this hospital called Centenary Hospital here in Scarborough, where I reside. So the rules of the game are, according to my doctor, if I get sick and need to see a doctor and he's not available because, let's say, he's on vacation or it's after hours or something like that, they don't want me going to emergency. They want me going to a walk-in clinic at the hospital. Of course, if it is an emergency, then yeah, by all means, You got a broken leg or something, there ain't no sense going to a walk-in clinic. And he says this way, apparently he doesn't get in guff with the hospital. You got to try and follow the rules. There's rules here. So, and, when you do have an issue with the doctor, like if you say like you're coughing too much, you think you have the flu, or, something bothering you, that you make an appointment with the doctor and you go see him, and he's supposed to try and diagnose you. Now, if they can't, their goal is to find something wrong with you so that they can send you off to somebody else, another specialist, get an x-ray, you need this medication, you need something. And I really don't know why. Like, do they get, what's the benefit to them? Well, in the case of Big Pharma, it would be that they get comped, like vacations and stuff. Like, they get value for everything that they prescribe. So, like, Big Pharma must have access to what the doctors are prescribing. And, this is sort of disturbing. So, like, I know this all started for me when I went to the doctors and like, I was having issues with my feet. Like, my toenail wouldn't grow back, and I had a big-ass corn on it and all sorts of stuff. And he's looking at it and all that, and he said, well, there's not much I can do about that. Is everything else all right? And I said, well, I'm getting up all the time to go to the washroom at night. And he says, oh, well, maybe you should go see a urologist. Now, of course, the urologist is in his hospital. That's where I'm going. He may not be the best urologist in the world or in my city, but that's the hospital's urologist, so that's what I have to go see. So that sort of, you can see what's going on here. So he's probably, going to get a kickback from that other doctor. Thanks for the referral. Here's $100 or, whatever, right? Who knows what goes on, right? And so he says, I'll set up the appointment and all that, and the nurse will call you and let you know when your appointment is. And I'm like, yeah, okay, what are you going to do, right? So, time goes by, a couple of weeks later, I get a phone call from the nurse. She says, yeah, we have your appointment all set up with your urologist. And it's on this such and such a date, and blah, 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 at this time. Is that okay? And I'm like, yeah, okay, no problem. All right, so now I have my appointment. So now keep in mind, already 2 weeks has gone by, and if I remember correctly, it was about another month and a half before I actually seen the urologist. So, we're talking basically 2 months. So, time comes to see the urologist. I go in there, and he's asking me all these questions, like how often do you get up at night to go to the washroom, how much you drink, what's your diet like, are you working? All these general sort of background things. And then he does the hoop-de-doo. And he does that and says, all right, I'll be back in a minute. And he comes back and he says, yeah, so upon examination, I noticed some abnormalities. So what I'm going to do is suggest that you get a PSA, which is, I can't remember the exact term, but it's like, it's a blood test for prostate cancer. I'll look it up and tell you in the next episode. Hang on one second. All right, sorry about that because I forgot what a PSA was. So a PSA is a prostate-specific antigen test. So that's supposed to measure to a degree what kind of, what level your cancer, if you have any, is. All right, so that's only a blood test. I'm good with that. So what we do is he gives me the forms to go get a blood test, which is also free in Canada. And I go get the blood tests. So blood tests are actually pretty easy in Canada. You can go like the very next day. You might have to wait an hour to get in there or whatever, but it's pretty quick. So I go in and I get my blood test, and usually the results are like in 3 days, but you have to wait for the doctor to make an appointment. So about 2 weeks later, his nurse calls me, says, we got the results of the blood test back. The doctor wants to see you. Can you come in on such and such? And yeah, no problem. So that is about another month away. So now we're at 2, 3, almost 4 months that apparently I might have been walking around with cancer. The timeline here is very important for things that I'm going to reveal later on. So I go see the doctor, and the urologist, and he comes in and he's like, okay, Dennis, got your PSA back, and you marked a 4.8. And he says, I'm going to explain what 4.8 means. He says, people in their 60s and 70s and 80s, when they die, if we did a PSA test on them, even if they didn't have cancer, they just died of natural causes, or even, got hit by a car or whatever, they would mark a 1 or a 2 on a PSA, because basically almost everybody has some form of cancer in their body. And he says, when you get concerned is when you start marking over 4. So you being a 4.8 means that we should be watching closely what's going on with you. So what I suggest we do is we get a biopsy. And he said, it'll when we do the biopsy, we can get some samples and see if they're cancerous or not. And I was like, well, yeah, okay, but I don't know what, what's entailed in a biopsy, and then they're not going to tell you. Unless you ask, and, I'm like, biopsy, whatever, I got to do this. I have cancer, or I could have cancer, right? So he says, so my nurse will be in touch with you, and we'll set up the biopsy, and we'll go from there. So, again, now I got to wait another 2-3 weeks, and the nurse calls me and says, okay, we have that biopsy all set up for you. It's on this date, such and such a date, time, blah, blah, blah. There's some instructions that you need to follow, but they're going to contact you and explain everything that you need to do. I'm like, okay, no problem. So now they called me about 2 weeks later and says, okay, we need you to come in on this time for the biopsy. And this is what we need you to do. We need you to do an enema the morning before you come in. You also can't eat for 12 hours before the appointment. So we need to have your bowels nice and clear for the biopsy. All right, well, I've never done an enema, okay, how about this? People do this all the time. So, there you go. So now, I had my original doctor's appointment. 2 months later, I seen the urologist. I waited another 2 months or so to get, I waited another 2 weeks about 2 months to get the results of my PSA, and then about another 2 months to get the actual biopsy. So we're hitting 6 months already that, maybe I've been walking around with cancer. So, but meanwhile, except for getting up in the middle of the night and going to the washroom maybe 2 or 3 times a day, there's basically nothing wrong with me except, I have COPD and rheumatoid arthritis, but I'm medicated for that. So, comes the morning of the biopsy, and so I have to perform an enema on myself in the morning. And I mean by myself because I have no one to help me for this. I mean, I can't ask family members. I'm not married. I don't have a girlfriend. So, you look up how to do that. It's pretty exciting stuff, but it's not all that bad. But, it's not fun times in Ridgemount High either. So that's done, and now off I go to the hospital to get my biopsy. Now this is, and meanwhile, keep in mind, this is all in the same hospital, because I can't go to another hospital that will rattle change. They don't like that stuff, right? So I go there, and you have to sign. During COVID, you gotta wear a mask, you gotta sign in, you gotta explain that you don't have any COVID and you haven't traveled and blah, blah, blah. All the usual stupid crap that we've been going through. So I'm in there, and I go into where you get the biopsies, and they say, oh, you're here for your biopsy? Okay, here's the waiting room. Go wait there. And somebody will be along in a minute to collect you. All right, so I'm going to go in there, and there's like 3, it's first thing in the morning, because the one thing they're considerate about is they don't want you starving to death. They're not going to say you can't eat for 12 hours and have you come in at 4 in the afternoon. So, props for that, it's 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever that I'm getting this done so that I don't have to starve the rest of the day. So I'm sitting in the waiting room, and then someone comes, yes, Dennis, you're next, come with me. And now I'm leaving the room, and we go walking down this hall. And this is like Get Smart stuff. You know, dun, 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 dun. We're walking down this hallway for like 2 minutes, you know, dun, 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 going through a door, going through another door, going through another door. And we go into this room. She says, okay, you want to change into this gown, you know, wear nothing, just the gown. We'll get you in a second. And so then, 5 minutes later, she's back. She said, okay, come with me. And they go in and they throw me on this table. And they say, okay, so we're going to be doing a biopsy, which also has a camera in it, so that we can see what's going on in there, and, we can get some samples. So what they have is like, it's almost like a ball retriever from, for those of you that play golf. It's like this pole, maybe not as long as a ball retriever, but the same sort of idea, right? And then it's got like a little ping pong ball at the end of it with the little snippies inside there, and probably a camera, like she said. So they grease you up and in it goes. And trust me, this is not fun. I'm a heterosexual male, so this isn't going over too well. And they are pushing it in, and it is very uncomfortable. And apparently they're taking little snippets inside and taking little samples. I'm not sure how many, but it was somewhere between 10 and 20 samples they wanted to take. Well, I could only make it to 10, and I was begging to stop. And I've been through a lot of pain in my life. I've dislocated my kneecap on a thoroughbred racehorse while riding it. Like I said, I've had hemorrhoids. I've had many things wrong with me. I've had gallstones and stuff like that. This pain is unreal. But I begged them to stop. They let me stop because I thought I had to go to the washroom. But no, it's just that this thing keeps banging up against everything, banging up against my bladder. I thought I had to go to the washroom. But so after a couple of minutes, I go back in and I was like, man, that's just terrible. She said, well, you don't have to do this if you don't want, but your doctor ain't going to be too happy. And meanwhile, I swear, my heart rate, one of the reasons I thought I was going to have a heart attack. Nobody took my blood pressure, but I'm sure I'm like 170 over 110. I'm sweating bullets, I'm virtually shaking, but she says, we're almost done, right? We just need a couple more samples. So that's it. I continue on with the procedure. They're ramming this thing up me. They're getting their samples, and it's finally done. Now, I'm shook. I am shook. I'm just shaking like a leaf. I'm almost in tears, sweating bullets, and I'm sitting down on the toilet, and I'm trying to go to the washroom and stuff because I think I have to go to the washroom, but it's the bladder banger that's making me do it. But I finally go after about 10 minutes, and there's, blood everywhere, and not blood from the urine, but blood from my rectum, because they did the ultimate invasion. I was not happy. That they actually gave me a diaper to go home because the bleeding will stop in a couple of days. You'll be okay. I'm like, wow, man, that's just like unbelievable. So after about a week or so, the bleeding stopped, and nothing was fixed, but everything sort of calmed down. So meanwhile, about a month later, the nurse calls me. Doctors got your results from the PSA. From the biopsy, and he wants you to come in. I'm like, okay, so they set the appointment. So now I go in to see him, and this now, like, you have to realize now, it's been 8 months. And this is where the controversy is really going to start. That I have to watch what I say for YouTube, but I don't care because I'm on Telegram. I'll edit this part out. So I go to see the doctor. So it's been like 8 months, and I say, he says, okay, we got the results back from your biopsy, and the last sample we took contained cancer, and it's active. So you do have prostate cancer. This isn't good news for me. Obviously I'm not too happy about this. And he says to me, let's discuss options. Now, you have rheumatoid arthritis and you have COPD. So I'm really not too sure if you're eligible for an operation where we could remove your prostate. He says, and then there's other options like, chemotherapy or radiation that can be discussed. And he says, but what I would want to do is go for another biopsy. No, that ain't gonna happen, dude. We're done with biopsies. You just said I have cancer, so I really don't see the purpose in a biopsy. He said, well, that's what I'm recommending. I understand that. You're recommending I get a biopsy. That's a recommendation. That's not a requirement. So let's just bypass that and move on to the next step. Well, that didn't go over well because doctors, they're God. You should be doing what they say. You shouldn't be questioning what's going on. This is how it is. And I said, I'm not going for a biopsy. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. It's not fun. And at this point, I see no purpose in it, so let's just move on to the next step. He said, well, if that's the way you feel, then the only other options are radiation and chemotherapy, and we don't do either one in this hospital. So what I will be doing is referring you to an oncologist in another hospital. I'm like, yeah, okay, fine. He said, so someone will get in contact with you eventually, and they will assess your situation and decide what the best treatment option is for you. Oh, okay, yep, that sounds like a plan. He said, all right. Well, since I'm handing you over, I'm going to have nothing else to do with you. I said, all right, yeah, whatever you think is best, send me on my way, that's okay. So I left. So, you know, this is what people need to understand. What's going to happen next is this part I'm probably going to have to cut out of YouTube, but we'll see. Hopefully, the people in the discussion here will help me out on whether I should post this or not. But the nurse, his nurse, phones me the next morning. She says, "Hi, Dennis. This is Nurse So-and-so from your urologist. The doctor would like to see you next week." And I was like, he just said he couldn't help me anymore and he was sending me to another hospital. And she says, "Yeah, I seen that on the report that you weren't eligible for an operation because of all your other comorbidities. So I'm not really too sure what this is about." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, all right, well, let's see what's going on. All right, so the appointment's next week." So I show up at the appointment a week later, and he's like, "So, Dennis, I've been thinking about it, and I think maybe you're eligible for an operation." And, like, this is where the spidey senses start tingling. I'm like, "Dude, you just told me last week I'm not eligible. My COPD, my rheumatoid arthritis, it'd be dangerous to put me under for the operation, blah, blah, blah. What's with the change of heart?" So, "Well, I was thinking about it, and I think you can handle it." I said, "No, I'm not going for the operation. We'll continue on the same." But I said, "Listen, you made the decision last week that I needed to go somewhere else, that I needed to get radiation or chemo. You wiped your hands clean of me, and let's leave it at that and forward me on to the next doctor." Right? And he's like, "Okay," but he's upset. And I'll tell you why he's upset. Because when he wrote in his summation of my issues, somebody in the hospital administration seen it and said, "You knucklehead, that's an operation we could make money on. We're in the business of making money, not passing off patients to other hospitals. So you get the clown back in here and tell him you're going to operate." That's what I honestly believe happened. Is that the way it happened? I don't know. They're not going to let you, read your file. You can't read your file, So, I stuck to my, I said, no, I'm leaving. So the hospital was mad that they weren't going to have a patient. Let that sink in. They would rather me die on the operating table than lose the money because the government pays for all this. So this is automatic cash. As soon as they sign me up, they get the money. This is what you have to be afraid of with socialized medicine, folks. You got to understand, it's all about the money. They don't give two craps if you live or die. All right, so I'm going to leave it here for now because I need to take a break. But I want you to absorb all that. And keep in mind now, we're at like the 8 or 9 month mark of me having cancer. And this whole time, they're, in a rush for decisions. They, "Oh, you got to make up your mind. You got to make up your mind." You have all the time. Like if you're still marking under 5, you don't have this, like 8 months. You've got 8 months to make a wise decision. So you need to think about what's best for you, how bad your situation is. Now, I want to point out that I'm not a doctor. I have no association with any doctors, pharmacists, or anything like that. Nobody in my family's a doctor. I'm not getting advice from anybody. This is just my opinion. You shouldn't be following my opinion, but you should be thinking about what's happening with you and around you. So with that, I'm going to say have a great day. And I'm going to be back shortly with the follow-up to all this. Yeah, thank you very much for listening.